The prospects of a ceasefire in Ukraine faded a bit last week after Russia launched one of the deadliest attacks on Kyiv since last July. Saturday, President Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky sat down together at the Vatican prior to Pope Francis's funeral, their first face-to-face meeting since February's Oval Office debacle. Trump later issued a social media post saying that maybe Putin doesn't want to stop the war and is just tapping him along. On Thursday, just hours after that attack on Kyiv, we spoke exclusively with Russia's Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov and talked about the potential components of a peace deal. European sources say that the U.S. proposal is really just kind of a list of bullet points. Does Russia have details, the details you need at this point, in terms of a formal proposal?
We are really polite people. And unlike some others, we never discuss in public what is being discussed in negotiations. Otherwise, negotiations are not serious. To ask for somebody's opinion regarding the substance, go to Zelensky. He is happy to talk to anybody through media, even to President Trump.
The National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, said last month that President Trump is asking for thousands of Ukrainian children who were taken into Russia to be released now as part of what he called confidence-building measures. What steps has Russia taken to meet Mr. Trump's request?
Look, long before the request coming from Washington, we have been addressing the issue of the fate of the kids who, during the conflict, found themselves outside their homes, outside their families. Most of these kids were attending what you call it, the place where people without parents...
Orphanage.
Orphanage. And as soon as, and we announce whatever details we have about those kids, and as soon as the parents or other relevant relatives make themselves available, they're getting the kids back. This has been the process for the last almost 3 years between the ombudsman of Russia and Ukraine.
So there's no new release of thousands of Ukrainian children at the request of President Trump?
No, nobody knows why some experts advise the president about thousands of Ukrainian children. Every now and then, once in 2-3 months, we organize exchanges with Ukrainians with the help of Qatar, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, who do not, make any noise about what they're doing. They just do something which we are participating in a very constructive manner, bringing kids back to their parents or relatives.
Do you take President Trump at his word when he says if Russia is unable to make a deal on ending the bloodshed in Ukraine, he'll put secondary tariffs, I think he means sanctions there, on oil coming out of Russia? Or do you think that at this point, the relationship between Russia and America has been rebuilt and that won't happen?
Well, I cannot comment on what you think President Trump meant when he said something.
What do you think he meant when he said secondary tariffs on oil coming out of Russia?
Well, we hear many things coming from President Trump. President Trump said that he's sick and tired of the situation in this settlement. And President Trump has his own proposals and has his own style in mentioning those proposals in his public speeches. We concentrate, as I said, on the real negotiations which President Trump supports and instructed his people to continue to engage in these negotiations.
Broadly speaking, when you look at what's happening in the battle space in Ukraine right now, analysts say about 18% of Ukrainian territory is under the control of Russian forces. U.S. intelligence says battlefield trends are in Russia's favor. So if that's the case, why should the U.S. believe Russia is serious about ending the war if everything is in your favor?
Well, we judge by the reaction of our American colleagues to what we tell them. And this is being done during negotiations. They're confidential as any serious negotiation. And they know our position. And Marco Rubio, he publicly said that now they better understand the Russian position and the reasons for what is going on. And he said that nobody in Washington lifted a finger to do the same, to understand, to try to understand Russia during the Biden administration. And this implies that the dialogue continues, that the dialogue is supported by the United States, and I reiterate that it is supported by the Russian Federation, and this dialogue continues.
So President Trump said he expects to meet soon with Vladimir Putin. What's an acceptable time and location? Why should they meet?
Look, the presidents are masters of their own destiny and of their own schedule. I heard President Trump say that he is planning to be somewhere mid-May, and that after that he would be suggesting some dates. I cannot add anything else.
But you think it would be good for the two leaders to meet soon?
We're always in favor of meeting with people who are ready for a dialogue. President Putin repeated this thousands of times, and when we met in Riyadh, together with President Putin's foreign policy advisor Ushakov, with Marco Rubio and Mike Waltz, the American colleagues clearly stated that the U.S. policy is based firmly on U.S. national interests. They understand that the Russian policy, led by President Putin, is also based on Russian national interests, and that it is the responsibility of great powers to make sure that whenever those national interests do not coincide, and this is in most of the cases, this difference should not be allowed to degenerate into confrontation. And that's what dialogue is for. But they also added that when the national interests of two countries or of more countries coincide, it would be stupid to miss an opportunity to translate this coincidence into some material, mutually beneficial projects. And this is absolutely our position.
You know that President Trump is coming up on 100 days in office, and he has made clear his patience is wearing thin with the diplomacy here. Do you expect the U.S. and Russia to continue to talk after these potential peace talks fall apart?
Russia is always available for a dialogue. So you have to address your question to the American side. Second, you prejudge the current process by saying that eventual collapse of the talks. We concentrate on doing business, not on thinking, failures or victories about anything.
We'll have more of our interview when we come back. Welcome back to Face the Nation. We return to our conversation from Thursday with Russia's Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov. Others in the Russian government have proposed that the U.S. and Russia could work together in the Arctic. Are there specific areas of discussion for cooperating right now?
You always want me to disclose
this
things,
is a public statement.
Things which might be discussed by respective officials of Russia and the United States, by those who are responsible for trade, economic cooperation, investments, and so on and so forth.
I'm asking what you think the potential is.
I read President Trump's book, The Art to Make a Deal, and he doesn't advise to disclose information before it's time.
Respectfully, President Trump speaks quite a lot about the things he would like to do with Russia and opportunities to work together. I understand you don't want to. On the specific things President Trump has said in public is that the U.S. could work with Ukraine to operate the largest nuclear power plant in Europe, which is in an area, Zaporizhzhia. Russians control that area right now. Do you agree with President Trump's public statements that the best security would be for the U.S. and Ukraine to operate that together?
No, we never received such an offer. And if we do, we would explain that the power station, Zaporozhye nuclear power station, is run by the Russian Federation state corporation called Rosatom. It is being under monitoring of the IAEA personnel permanently located on the site. And if not for the Ukrainian regular attempts to attack the station and to create a nuclear disaster for Europe and for Ukraine as well, the safety requirements are fully implemented, and it is in very good hands.
So that's a no.
No, I don't think any change is conceivable.
Okay, because that was in a public statement from the White House to the media.
We as I said, we did not receive any proposal which would be specific.
I just want to be abundantly clear, because that is also widely reported to be in the U.S. proposal currently on the table.
Why don't you ask me about President Trump's position on Crimea?
You liked what President Trump said about Crimea when he said that it had been under Russian control since 2014?
It's not about liking or disliking. It's about the fact that he said the truth.
President Trump said Crimea is not even being discussed right now.
Yes, because this is a done deal.
You mean Russia occupies and controls and will not negotiate the future of Crimea? Is that what you're saying?
Russia do not negotiate its own territory.
Back in January, Russia signed a deal with Iran to become a strategic partner. Would Russia be willing to sever that relationship at the request of the U.S. if it meant better relations with America?
There was never any request like this, and we welcome the process which was initiated between the United States and Iran.
Would you keep Iran's enriched nuclear material that they've made in the past few years? Is that an offer to the U.S.?
We are not putting our nose in the negotiations between two countries, one of which is not Russia. We welcome the dialogue between the U.S. and Iran. We would be certainly ready to help if both parties believe this is going to be useful, and they know that we are ready.
I want to ask you quickly about nuclear weapons, because Russia is such a nuclear powerhouse. According to U.S. intelligence, Russia is developing a new satellite meant to carry a nuclear weapon, which would knock out other satellites and devastate the U.S. if it's used. That's in publicly published material. Does Russia intend to violate past treaties and actually put a nuclear weapon in space?
Well, before asking this question, you have to check whether this is true or not.
This is what U.S. intelligence says.
U.S. intelligence, I was listening to President Trump about his views of what is the list of achievements of U.S. intelligence, and I have my own facts on which I rely. We have been promoting for many years in the United Nations a resolution prohibiting putting any nuclear weapons into outer space. The country which is categorically against it is the United States.
Are you saying the Trump administration's intelligence community findings are incorrect in regard to Russia developing a new satellite meant to carry a nuclear weapon?
We denied those allegations. I cannot comment about the validity of the intelligence reports, as I told you. We never received any facts which would confirm the allegations.
Do you have any interest in arms control talks with the United States, with the Trump administration?
If the United States is willing to get back to this track, we would see what are the conditions under which this might be possible. As long as in the U.S. doctrinal documents, we are described as adversary when the officials in Washington some time ago called us enemy. So we want to understand what Washington thinks of our relationship and whether Washington is ready for, I would emphasize once again, an equal, mutually respectful dialogue heading to finding a balance of interest. If this is the approach, everything is possible.
You can watch our full conversation with Foreign Minister Lavrov on our website and on our YouTube page. Just search Face the Nation.